The smoke still hung thick over the battlefield, like a gray funeral shroud. Sergeant Marcus Chun moved carefully through the rubble, his rifle raised, his eyes scanning every shadow. Behind him, 3 members of his squad picked their way through the destruction, their boots crunching on broken glass and twisted metal. "Sector's clear, Sarge," called out Private Kowalski, lowering her weapon slightly. Marcus nodded but didn't relax. He'd been fighting in this war for 3 years, and he'd learned that battlefields were never truly clear. The Velcar could be anywhere, waiting in the ruins like patient predators. This planet, Kepler 442b, had once been beautiful according to the old survey reports. Now it was just another graveyard. "Stay sharp," Marcus said quietly. "Command wants this area secure before." He stopped. There was a sound, faint and strange, coming from somewhere to his left. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't human. It was almost like singing? No, not singing. More like a kitten mewing, but deeper, more resonant. "You hear that?" he asked. Kowalski tilted her head. "Hear what?" The sound came again, weaker this time. Marcus moved toward it, stepping over a collapsed concrete barrier. His squad followed reluctantly, weapons ready. They rounded the corner of a destroyed building, and Marcus froze. There, half buried under debris, was a creature he'd never seen before. It was small, maybe the size of a large dog, with scales that shimmered even under the coating of ash and blood. Wings, tattered and torn, lay crumpled against its sides. Its body was serpentine, but with 4 legs ending in delicate claws. The head was distinctly reptilian, with small horns just beginning to emerge from its skull. "What the hell is that?" breathed Kowalski. The creature's eyes flickered open. They were gold, startlingly bright and unmistakably intelligent. It looked at Marcus with an expression he recognized instantly, despite the alien features. Fear, pain, desperation. "It's dying," said Corporal Hayes from behind Marcus. "Whatever it is, it won't last long." Marcus lowered his rifle slowly, letting it hang from its strap. The creature watched his movements with those golden eyes. It tried to lift its head, but collapsed back with a whimper that made something in Marcus's chest twist painfully. "Sarge, we need to move," Kowalski said urgently. "Command wants us back at base in 20 minutes. "I know," Marcus said, but he didn't move. He couldn't. He'd seen plenty of death in this war. Human death, alien death, even the death of entire ecosystems caught in the crossfire. He'd learned to push past it, to keep moving, to do his job. But something about this creature was different. It was just a baby. He could see that now. The proportions of his body, the way it looked at him with that mixture of terror and hope. It was a child. Someone's child. Marcus. Hayes said, using his first name, which he only did when things were serious. "We can't help it. Even if we wanted to, we don't know what it needs. We don't even know what it is." Marcus crouched down slowly, his knees protesting after hours of combat. The creature flinched but didn't try to flee. Maybe it couldn't. Maybe it had simply given up. Marcus had seen that look in human eyes before, in the moments before the end. "Hey!" he said softly, knowing it probably couldn't understand him. "Hey, it's okay." The creature made that sound again, that broken singing crying sound. One of its small clawed hands reached out slightly, trembling with the effort. Marcus looked back at his squad. Kowalski was shaking her head. Hayes looked uncomfortable. Only Rodriguez, the youngest of them, seemed uncertain, his eyes moving between Marcus and the creature. Every instinct Marcus had developed as a soldier told him to move on. They were in hostile territory. They had orders. They had a mission. One life, especially an alien life, especially an unknown alien life, couldn't matter when weighed against the safety of his squad and the success of their operation. But Marcus had joined the military 12 years ago because he believed in something. He believed humanity was better than its enemies. He believed they were fighting for something that mattered, something about dignity and freedom, and the right of living things to exist without fear. What did those beliefs mean if he walked away now? Marcus unclipped his rifle and set it down carefully on the ground. The act felt enormous, like dropping a shield in the middle of battle. In a way, that's exactly what it was. "What are you doing?" Kowalski demanded. Marcus didn't answer. He reached out slowly toward the dying creature, his hand extended, palm up, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The creature's golden eyes locked onto Marcus's outstretched hand. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with visible effort, it lifted its small head and touched its snout to his palm. The contact sent a shock through Marcus's body, not painful, but startling. It felt like warmth spreading up his arm and into his chest. "Sarge, we got movement," Kowalski hissed, checking her scanner. Velcar Patrol, 200 meters and closing. Marcus made his decision. He pulled off his thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped it carefully around the creature. It was lighter than he expected, its bones fragile under his hands. The creature whimpered but didn't resist. "You've lost your mind," Hayes muttered, but he was already moving, covering their retreat. They ran. Marcus cradled the creature against his chest while his squad provided cover. His rifle bounced uselessly against his back. If they encountered hostiles now, he'd be helpless. But somehow, that didn't seem to matter as much as the weak heartbeat he could feel through the blanket. The base loomed ahead, all concrete walls and defensive towers. Marcus veered away from the main entrance, heading for the medical wing side door. He couldn't let command see this. Not yet. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her workstation as Marcus burst through the door, his squad filing in behind him. Her eyes widened when she saw the bundle in his arms. "Marcus, what?" "Please," Marcus said simply. "It's dying." Yuki stared at him for 3 long seconds. Then her professional instincts took over. Put it on the table. Carefully, Marcus laid the creature down on the examination table. Under bright lights, he could see just how badly injured it was. Deep gashes ran along its side, and one wing hung at an unnatural angle. Yuki's hands moved quickly, scanning, probing gently, her face growing more amazed by the second. "This is impossible," she whispered. "The scale structure, the bone density, the energy signatures. Marcus, do you know what this is?" "No, it's a Drecon." Yuki's voice shook slightly. "They're supposed to be extinct, gone for thousands of years. They're legendary. Some people think they were never real at all." "Well, this one's real," Marcus said. "Can you help it?" Yuki was already reaching for her instruments. "I can try." For the next 2 hours, Marcus watched as Yuki worked. She cleaned wounds, set the broken wing, administered fluids through an 4 carefully inserted into a vein she'd located with her scanner. The creature remained still, its breathing shallow, its eyes half closed. "Will it live?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "I don't know," Yuki admitted. "I'm doing my best, but I've never treated anything like this before. No one has, not in living memory." As if responding to her words, the creature's eyes opened fully. They fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him step closer instinctively. The creature's mouth opened slightly, and a sound emerged, not the mewing from before, but something different, almost like words, but not any language Marcus knew. Then something extraordinary happened. A voice spoke inside Marcus's head. It was small, frightened, broken, like a child who'd been crying for hours. "Safe?" the voice asked. "Mother?" "Gone." "Safe." Marcus gasped. His knees went weak, and he grabbed the edge of the table for support. Did anyone else?" "What's wrong?" Yuki asked urgently. "It spoke to me," Marcus said. "In my head. It asked if it was safe." The others exchanged glances. Yuki's scanner hummed as she waved it over both Marcus and the creature. Her eyes widened. "There's a neural link forming between you. Some kind of telepathic bond. I've read theories about this in the old texts, but I never thought." Marcus looked down at the creature. Its golden eyes watched him with hope and trust that felt almost painful. Slowly, carefully, he placed his hand on its head, between the small horns. The creature leaned into his touch. "Yes," Marcus said aloud, hoping it would understand. "You're safe. I promise." The creature made a soft chirping sound, and Marcus felt a wave of relief and gratitude wash through his mind. It wasn't his emotion. It was coming from the creature. From her, he realized she was female And she was just a baby, and she was alone in the universe except for him. "I'll call you, Ember," Marcus said softly. The door burst open. Lieutenant Ramirez stood there, flanked by 2 military police officers. His face was hard. "Sergeant Chun, step away from the specimen. General Pierce wanted transferred to the research facility immediately." Marcus looked at Ember. Her eyes were wide with fear again, and he could feel panic rising through their connection. "No," Marcus said. Lieutenant Ramirez's expression hardened. "That wasn't a request, Sergeant. That's a direct order." Marcus positioned himself between Ember and the military police. Behind him, he felt Ember's small body trembling on the examination table. Fear poured through their connection, like ice water. "She's not a specimen," Marcus said firmly. "She's a person. It's an unknown alien life form that could be dangerous," Ramirez countered. "General Pierce has authorized containment protocols." As the military police stepped forward, Ember panicked. Marcus felt her terror spike through their bond, and suddenly the room filled with heat. Ember's mouth opened, and a small gout of flame shot toward the ceiling. It wasn't much, barely enough to scorch the paint, but everyone jumped back. Alarms began blaring throughout the medical wing. "Stand down," Ramirez shouted, drawing his sidearm. "No!" Marcus threw his arms wide, shielding Ember completely. "She's scared. She's just a baby. Look at her." More soldiers poured into the room. Yuki moved to stand beside Marcus, her jaw set. "Sergeant Chun is right. My preliminary analysis shows clear signs of sentience. Taking her by force would violate the Sapient Rights Accords." "That's for command to decide, Doctor," Ramirez said, but he looked uncertain now. Within an hour, Marcus found himself standing before a military tribunal. The room was cold and formal, with 5 senior officers seated behind a long table. General Pierce sat in the center, her gray hair pulled back severely, her eyes sharp. Ember lay on a hovering medical stretcher beside Marcus, too weak to stand but watching everything with frightened golden eyes. "Sergeant Chun," General Pierce began, "you've been charged with insubordination, failure to follow direct orders, and compromising base security. How do you plead?" "Guilty, ma'am," Marcus said clearly, "but I'd do it again." Murmurs rippled through the observers in the gallery. Pierce held up a hand for silence. "Explain yourself, Sergeant." Marcus took a deep breath. 3 years ago, I enlisted because I believed humanity stood for something. We said we were different from the Velkar, better than them, because we valued life and freedom. We wrote the Sapient Rights Accords and convinced half the galaxy to sign them. He gestured to Ember. "But what are those words worth if we're willing to throw them away the moment it's inconvenient?" "This creature is unknown," said Colonel Harrison from the left side of the table. "We don't know its capabilities or intentions. Her name is Ember," Marcus said, "and she's a child whose mother died protecting her from our war. A war she had nothing to do with." "You can't possibly know that," Harrison scoffed. "Yes, I can." Marcus turned to Ember and placed his hand on her head. "Show them." Ember's eyes began to glow softly. Through their bond, Marcus felt her reach out, extending her consciousness to everyone in the room. It was difficult for her, exhausting, but she did it. Suddenly, the tribunal members gasped. Marcus knew they were seeing what Ember was showing them, her memories, a nest high in crystal caves, her mother's gentle voice teaching her to sing. Then the explosions, the sound of aircraft and weapons fire, her mother's massive form curling around her as missiles struck, the crushing weight, the silence, hours of pain and fear and loneliness before Marcus found her. When the vision faded, several people in the room were wiping their eyes. General Pierce sat very still, her expression unreadable. "She's sentient," Yuki spoke up, stepping forward with her tablet. "My scans confirm it. Her brain structure shows areas associated with language, abstract thought, and emotional processing. Taking her against her would make us no different than slavers." Colonel Harrison leaned forward. "Even if that's true, the creature, Ember, could be valuable to the war effort. The Drecon were supposed to have incredible powers." "She's 3 months old," Marcus said, his voice hard. "Are you suggesting we turn a baby into a weapon?" The room fell silent. General Pierce studied Marcus for a long moment, then looked at Ember. The small dragon met her gaze steadily despite her fear. "This tribunal is adjourned for deliberation," Pierce announced. 2 hours later, Marcus was called back. His heart pounded as he stood before the tribunal again, Ember beside him. General Pierce spoke. "Sergeant Chun, you are hereby reprimanded and demoted 1 rank for insubordination. However, after careful consideration and consultation with our legal experts, we agree with Dr. Tanaka's assessment. Ember is a sentient being and falls under protection of the Sapient Rights Accords." Marcus felt relief flood through him. "She will remain in your care as her guardian," Pierce continued. "However, there are conditions." General Pierce pulled up a holographic star map. Red dots scattered across one sector like drops of blood. "Intelligence has detected energy signatures matching Ember's bioscan in the Andromeda Rim. We believe there may be more Drecon there." Marcus looked down at Ember, who had grown noticeably in the past 2 weeks. She was now the size of a large dog, her scales gleaming with renewed health. Through their bond, he felt her surge of hope and longing. "Deep in Velkar territory," Marcus observed. "Yes," Pierce said. "You and a small team will go on a reconnaissance mission. If there are survivors, we need to know. And Ember may be the only one who can find them." 3 days later, Marcus stood on the bridge of a small stealth ship with Kowalski, Hayes, Rodriguez, and Dr. Tanaka. Ember sat beside him, her head nearly reaching his shoulder now. She'd learned to project simple thoughts to all of them, though her bond with Marcus remained the strongest. Others, Ember's voice whispered in their minds. "Feel them. This way." She guided them like a living compass, past Velkar patrols and through asteroid fields, toward a rogue moon orbiting a dead star. As they approached, Marcus felt a chill run through him. The moon's surface was covered in artificial structures, all bearing the same symbol. 3 interconnected circles. "That's not Velkar," Hayes said slowly. "That's Korthak Collective." "The trading faction?" Rodriguez frowned. "They're supposed to be neutral." They landed in a hidden canyon and approached the facility on foot. The structure was massive, built into the moon's crust. Security was light, too light for such a remote location. Marcus didn't like it. Inside, the corridors were sterile and empty. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly blue glow. Ember led them deeper, moving faster now, her claws clicking urgently on the metal floor. They found the chamber in the facility's heart. Marcus stopped breathing. Behind walls of shimmering energy fields, dozens of Drecon hung suspended in stasis. They were magnificent and terrible, each one easily 10 times Ember's current size, with scales of every color imaginable. Tubes ran from their bodies to massive collection tanks filled with glowing liquid. "They're draining them," Yuki whispered, horrified. "Harvesting their energy." Ember made a sound Marcus had never heard from her before, a keening wail of grief and rage. Through their bond, he felt her recognize faces. Family, friends, her grandmother. "This equipment is too advanced for the Velkar," Kowalski said, examining a control panel. "The Korthaks have been doing this." "But why?" Hayes accessed a nearby terminal, his fingers flying. His face went pale. "Marcus, you need to see this." The screen showed transaction records. The Korthaks had been selling weapons to both humanity and the Velkar for years, playing both sides. But more than that, they'd been deliberately prolonging the war, ensuring maximum conflict in Drecon territory. The harvested essence was being sold as a power source, worth more than any other substance in the known galaxy. "They started this war," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "They herded the Drecon into the conflict zone and then harvested the survivors." Alarms blared. Red lights flooded the chamber. "They know we're here," Hayes shouted. Armed Korthak soldiers poured into the room. Not the friendly traders everyone knew, but heavily armored mercenaries. Weapons fire erupted. Marcus's team took cover behind equipment, returning fire, but they were outnumbered. A blast caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the ground hard, blood spreading across his uniform. Through fading vision, he saw Ember running toward him, her eyes blazing with fear and fury. "No," he tried to say. "Run." Save yourself. But Ember pressed her head against his chest. Heat flowed from her into him, not burning but healing. Marcus gasped as he felt his wound knitting closed, felt his strength returning. But more than that, he felt Ember's life force intertwining with his own, becoming permanently connected. Their bond, which had been strong before, became absolute. Marcus could see through Ember's eyes. He could feel her power flowing through his veins. They were no longer separate beings standing together. They were something new. Ember threw back her head and roared. The sound shattered the energy fields, holding the other Drecon. Massive dragons began to wake, confused and weak but alive. The eldest among them, her scales the color of starlight, fixed her ancient eyes on Ember and Marcus. Granddaughter. The old dragon's voice filled everyone's minds. You found help. You found hope. The Drecon joined the fight. Even weakened, they were formidable. Fire filled the chamber. Korthak's soldiers retreated. Hayes downloaded everything from the terminal, while Rodriguez and Kowalski helped the dragons move toward the exit. The facility shook violently as explosions ripped through its lower levels. Ember's grandmother, the ancient dragon whose scales shimmered like captured starlight, turned to face Marcus and his team. Go! Her voice resonated in their minds, powerful despite her weakness. I will hold them back. Protect my granddaughter. Protect this new bond you share. No! Ember's mental cry was anguished. Just found you, and you gave me hope before the end, little flame. That is enough. The ancient dragon's eyes were gentle. Go now. Tell the galaxy what was done here. Marcus felt Ember's grief crash through their bond like a tidal wave, but he also felt her grandmother's certainty. There was no time to argue. He helped guide the weakened Drecon toward the ship while his team provided cover. Behind them, Ember's grandmother unleashed a torrent of flame that turned the corridor into an inferno. They escaped just as the facility exploded, turning the moon's surface into a sea of fire. Ember pressed against the viewport, watching until there was nothing left to see. Marcus rested his hand on her head, sharing her sorrow, letting her know she wasn't alone. The journey back to Coalition space took 3 days. The freed Drecon, barely 200 in total, huddled together in the cargo bay, slowly regaining their strength. Yuki worked tirelessly to care for them, while Hayes compiled the evidence they recovered. When they arrived, the data Hayes had stolen couldn't be ignored or buried. The Korthak's collective's crimes were laid bare for everyone to see. They'd manipulated humanity and the Velkar into war, orchestrated attacks to drive the Drecon into conflict zones, and harvested the survivors for profit. Hundreds of thousands had died on all sides to line Korthak's pockets. General Pierce called an emergency session with Coalition Command and, surprisingly, invited Velkar representatives. The insectoid aliens arrived under heavy guard, their mandibles clicking with suspicion. But when they saw the evidence, their hostility turned to shock. They played us. The Velkar commander's translated voice crackled through the speakers. Made us believe humans were expanding into our territory. Provided coordinates for human military bases that were actually Drecon nesting sites. Marcus stood before the joint assembly, Ember at his side. She was nearly his height now, her presence commanding despite her youth. The other Drecon formed a semicircle behind them, a living testament to the crimes committed. I'm just a soldier, Marcus began, his voice steady. I don't understand politics or grand strategy, but I know this, on that battlefield, I had a choice. I could have walked away from a dying creature because it was convenient, because it was safe, because following orders is easier than following your conscience. He placed his hand on Ember's neck, feeling her warmth, her strength, her trust. I chose compassion instead. And that choice changed everything. It exposed a conspiracy. It stopped a war. It saved 200 lives that the galaxy thought were already extinct. Marcus looked around the room, meeting the eyes of humans, Velkar and Drecon alike. Humanity always said we were better than our enemies because we valued life and freedom. Today, we have a chance to prove those words mean something. Ember stepped forward, her voice projecting into every mind in the chamber. I was alone, dying, afraid. Marcus showed me that kindness exists even in war. His people saved mine when they had no reason to. No profit, no advantage, just because it was right. One of the elder Drecon, his scales deep crimson, spoke next. For 3,000 years, we hid from a younger species, believing you too violent, too short-sighted to be trusted. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps it is time to stop hiding. The debates lasted for days, but eventually an agreement was reached. The Coalition, the Velkar Collective, and the Drecon formed the Triad Accord. Their first joint mission was to hunt down the Korthak's leadership and dismantle their criminal empire. Their second was to establish guidelines for cooperation between species, with the Drecon sharing their ancient knowledge in exchange for protection as they rebuilt their population. Marcus was promoted to Ambassador Guardian, serving as the official bridge between humans and Drecon. He wasn't a diplomat or a scholar, but he had something more valuable, a genuine bond with the Drecon that others could see and aspire to. Volunteers came forward from all three species, hoping to form partnerships with the dragons. Not all were successful, but enough bonds formed to create a new generation of dragon riders. Warriors, yes, but also explorers, healers, and teachers. 6 months after that desperate day on the battlefield, Marcus and Ember returned to Kepler 442b. A memorial now stood where they'd first met, listing the names of all who died in the manufactured conflict. Ember placed one of her scales at its base, a dragon tradition of remembrance and respect. "Do you regret it?" Ember asked, her voice clear and strong now in Marcus's mind. "Dropping your gun that day?" Marcus smiled, watching ships from 3 species fly overhead in formation. At their center, dragon riders soared through clouds, sunlight gleaming off their scales. "It was the most human thing I've ever done."